The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Welcome to Health for a Lifetime. I'm your host, Don McIntosh. We're glad that you joined us today. And today we're going to be talking with Dr. George Guthrie. Dr. Guthrie is from southern Oklahoma, where he serves as the medical director for the Lifestyle Center of America. The Lifestyle Center of America treats all kinds of different lifestyle diseases.
That's very true, Don. We like to optimize people's lifestyle so as to minimize their disease and minimize their dependence on medication.
You put them in control, not the doctor.
That's what we're trying to do. Educate them, teach them how it works, and then share with them their responsibility and encourage them to do it.
And, you know, that's refreshing for me to talk to someone like you because, and I don't mean to stereotype, but, you know, someone that has your training, you of course have done over 20 years worth of medical practice. You've taught in the School of Health, and we could go through the alphabet soup. You have a lot of different letters, but you could be really focusing on something that's more monetarily driven. But this is a service that's taking all of that information and trying to put someone else in the driver's seat, and I appreciate it.
It's back to the basics. I was actually taught, as most doctors are in their training, non-drug therapy comes first. I think many doctors get discouraged because the patient comes in and says, I want a pill, usually.
And today we're going to be talking about something that you can't buy over the counter.
I guess that's right.
We're going to talk about something that actually goes away from taking anything over the counter.
I guess that's right.
And this is the subject of fasting. And fasting and its medical benefits and maybe some dangers as well.
Sure.
But what exactly is fasting? I know you look at this from different perspectives.
Yeah. I will often ask people, what do you think of when you hear the word fasting? Try it.
You think, well, I think I'm going to have to deprive myself for a long time.
Deprivation of some kind, sure. Other people think of a religious experience. Right?
Like we went and we fasted
and
for 40
prayed,
days
or
and nights.
the Muslims have their Ramadan sort of a thing where they don't eat during the day, but then they eat at night. I hear things like fruit fast, for example, and that would mean, what would that mean?
No fruit.
Well,
or
fruit fast means they
only
just
fruit.
have fruit, or just fruit juice.
Or break fast.
Well, yeah, that's a little different one. Okay.
Or like entertainment fasting, like no television. I've heard that before.
Okay, so some sort of
Lent.
Lent, okay, abstaining from something.
Okay.
Another word that often comes up is cleansing or purification. But as I talk about fasting, I would like to talk at it not from that perspective at all, but from the perspective of a physiologist.
Medical perspective.
A medical perspective. From a medical perspective, from the perspective of physiology, what does it mean to reach the fasting state? What is the fasting state?
Maybe some of us have never reached that before in America since we have so much obesity.
It could very well be. I think you're right, as a matter of fact.
So what is it, medically speaking?
Normally, the energy that we use goes into our mouth, into our stomachs. When our body is taking it from the stomach or the intestines and using it as energy, that's kind of the normal feeding state. The opposite of that now is when there is no food in the intestines supplying energy, and the body has to begin to bring energy in from storage. So the fasting state is really a change in the hormone milieu in the body to have energy come from storage rather than from the intestines.
So when your stomach is empty and your colon is empty and the whole alimentary canal is empty, when that gets empty, you move from being
I don't know that we can say empty, Don, but at least the calories are taken out and just the waste is left.
Now, how long does it take to get to that state, since none of us have never experienced it? So many of us have not.
The average, and it depends on the meal, about 6 to 8 hours. A fatty meal, a heavy meal will take longer. And a shorter meal, for example, if you made a, quotes, meal of an apple, it would be a shorter time than 8 hours. Okay. But that's generally the time frame we look at, 8 to 12 hours.
So is this good or is this bad, the fasting state?
Well, that's an excellent question. I suppose it depends on where you are when you're fasting. If I were, let's say, in a prisoner of war camp somewhere, and I was wasting away, this fasting state would not be a very good thing, because I would be eating myself up. Not only does the body take energy out of storage, as in fat out of storage, but it will actually begin to eat up muscle. That would be a bad thing.
Okay.
But if I happen to be an overweight American that would like to lose some weight to get rid of some disease that maybe is made worse by the weight, from joint pain to diabetes to hypertension to heart disease, whatever it may be, then maybe that fasting state is not as much of an enemy as I thought it was.
That's interesting. You know, I was reading the history once about those concentration camps, and it was during that time that they started to understand that some of our Western diseases could be reversed.
Yes.
So
yes.
I guess in the lowlands and Belgium and all these different places, when the enemy came through and took all the food stores, everybody went from feasting to fasting, and that's when they figured out.
Diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, obesity just kind of fade away when there is not enough energy to go around.
So you wouldn't even really maybe know as much as you do, or there at the Lifestyle Center, if there hadn't been like a fast that came because of the war. Now, we're not recommending war, of course.
No, we're not recommending war.
But we learned a lot from it.
And you're right. Much of the research on fasting actually started around that time. World War II.
You know, what are then the benefits? Let's say we're one of those few that, well, many in America that probably could benefit from a little fasting. What are the benefits that you would suggest for us?
Several months ago, I did a literature search to try to see what I could find in the literature that would give me some idea, and I found some rather interesting things. Fasting may be beneficial for helping the body fight bacterial infections, maybe decrease rheumatoid arthritis, that is, help treat rheumatoid arthritis, increase the melatonin in the body, maybe help hypertension, and even improve insulin resistance, that is type 2 diabetes.
Well, that's quite a mouthful. You went through that, but let's go back and take them one at a time. What about, you're saying it decreases the possibility for infection. How does that work?
Well, your body's ability to fight infection is actually better when you're in the fasting state if it's a bacterial infection. The same is not true of a viral infection.
So if you have a virus, you need to eat. If you have a bacteria, you don't need to eat.
Well, you know, the old wives' tale now we've heard for years is something like starve a fever, feed a cold, right? And there's some scientific basis for that old line.
So if you have a bacterial infection, it's really best to kind of knock off eating.
Well, most people actually lose their appetite. It may be the body itself saying that's better. The white blood cells, as they're fighting a bacterial infection, will release little messengers, chemical messenger, that would make somebody not want to eat. So generally we lose our appetite. And it's reasonable when we're fighting a bacterial infection to decrease the food we take in. Fasting state may be helpful.
And then a rheumatoid arthritis,
Well, that's a mouthful.
Yeah. How does that work?
Rheumatoid arthritis is a autoimmune disease. That is, the immune system gets confused. The immune system has two sides. One side of it says, go get it, and the other side says, oh, no, you don't.
Okay.
And if that gets out of balance, let's say a little weak on the oh, no, you don't side, the body's immune system may go out and begin to fight itself. If it's fighting itself, as in joints, we call it rheumatoid arthritis. And there are some reports in the medical literature of people having improvements in their rheumatoid arthritis from fasting. Up to, generally, at least the ones I've seen, we're talking about 10, 12, 14 days. A rather long period of time with just water. and apparently the immune system comes back in balance. It's not something I have ever recommended for anybody, but it's something I found in the literature. I certainly wouldn't do it at home. I think you need a doctor's supervision for that because there are some significant problems. We'll talk about those a little later.
Do you have fasting as a part of what you do at the Lifestyle Center?
Yes, we do. Use a little bit of that.
And we'll maybe talk a little more about that.
Yes,
okay,
let's do that.
So we have fighting bacteria. We have sometimes as a treatment for rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes.
And then the third one you mentioned was the melatonin. What is melatonin? What does
Well,
this...
when people think melatonin, they think sleep, right?
Many times do.
And many people, when they're not able to sleep, will take a melatonin supplement.
Okay.
Well, melatonin is made in the brain by a little gland called the pineal gland.
Pine cone, yeah.
Okay, pine cone. To help the brain sleep. Melatonin is a rest and rejuvenation hormone. A lot of folks don't know that when you're in the fasting state, your intestinal lining will actually make a comparatively larger amount of melatonin. I've noticed myself when I'm fasting as I eat that I sleep better. And I've heard the same from many others who are trying the same thing. So fasting increases melatonin in the body and may actually help with the healing and rejuvenation and, of course, the sleep.
Well, I've heard that if you eat something late at night, that cuts down melatonin production too, which I guess would go with fasting at night. That's why we call it break fast, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, melatonin, rheumatoid arthritis, fighting infections, but then you had another one. What was your next one?
Hypertension.
Okay, hypertension.
High blood pressure. Some interesting work reporting that people with high blood pressure who fasted for 10 to 11 days, 90% of them were able to lower their blood pressure down into the normal range. Significant drops. It's a rather interesting concept. Well, I don't know that we understand exactly how it works. I've got some ideas as far as how physiology might go together, but the study that I have reviewed did not tell us how that happens. It simply reported that it does happen.
So fasting can help bring that blood pressure down, and I guess every point it's brought down is very significant. I mean, you can really have a reduction in a lot of problems that hypertension causes.
Right. Now, closely tied to hypertension is another disease, diabetes.
Diabetes, okay.
Diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. I mean, these are all kind of tied together now in our understanding, along with obesity. My uncle, Uncle Al.
Okay, Al.
Was an eye specialist.
Your dad's brother, your mom's brother?
My dad's sister's husband.
Okay.
Okay? Uncle Al, we just loved Uncle Al. One day, he went out and got in an airplane crash and died. So he has all these medical books. And when I go to medical school, the family says, why don't you take him? Well, it ends up that Uncle Al was a collector of old medical books, at least a few. He had a couple of them that I have really enjoyed and kind of kept. One of them was battlefield surgery, World War I.
Okay.
It's just kind of interesting. And the other one was entitled The Starvation Treatment of Diabetes. Its publication date was 1915.
1915, that's a long time. I don't even think they knew what diabetes was then, did they?
No, they knew what diabetes was. They may have been diagnosing diabetes by tasting urine to see if it was sweet, but they knew it was a high sugar problem.
Boy, that sounds like...
But there was no such thing as insulin in those days. That wasn't until, 1921, 1923 that Banting and Best discovered insulin. So in those days, the most effective treatment of diabetes was this, they called it starvation treatment. Starvation sounds a lot like the fasting state, physiologically.
That's right.
And it's a very interesting kind of description. It was first we wanted to leave them in bed, and then we said, well, let's let them go ahead and walk around. As a matter of fact, they do better when they exercise, and they're starved until their blood sugars or the sugar in their urine reaches normal. It just goes away. Now, to me, that was an interesting concept. You see, in those days, they didn't even know the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. They thought they were the same thing. It's high sugar. For those who had type 1 diabetes, where the pancreas is dead and there's no insulin, why finding insulin was the cure. And there are people alive today because of that insulin discovery. But type 2 diabetes, which we now understand, has a problem with high insulin levels to start with. We've discovered that not only is high blood sugar a problem, but high insulin is also part of the problem. Now, kind of coming full circle, it's reasonable to come back to this fasting business and say, or starvation as they called it in that book, and to say, is this dealing with lowering the insulin levels? And it sure looks like it is. In our experience at Lifestyle Center of America, we will place people on a relatively short fast, about 3 days, with water, and then watch that insulin resistance improve.
So this is a old but now new treatment for diabetes, fasting. We're talking with Dr. George Guthrie. We're talking about fasting, and we've talked about some of the benefits. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the dangers. So get both sides of the story. Join us when we come back.
Have you found yourself wishing that you could shed a few pounds? Have you been on a diet for most of your life, but not found anything that will really keep the weight off? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, then we have a solution for you that works. Dr. Hans Diehl and Dr. Eileen Ludington have written a marvelous booklet called Reversing Obesity Naturally, and we'd like to send it to you free of charge. Here's a medically sound approach successfully used by thousands who were able to eat more and lose weight permanently without feeling guilty or hungry through lifestyle medicine. Dr. Diehl and Dr. Ludington have been featured on 3ABN, and in this booklet, they present a sensible approach to eating, nutrition, and lifestyle changes that can help you prevent heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Call or write today for your free copy of Reversing Obesity Naturally, and you could be on your way to a healthier, happier you. It's absolutely free of charge, so call or write today.
Welcome back. We've been talking with Dr. George Guthrie. We've been talking about fasting and the benefits of fasting. And I want to just review that list with you in our graphic. We'll look at it. There were some benefits, Dr. Guthrie. Fighting bacterial infections. We talked about that.
Yes.
Increasing melatonin from the GI tract, so we give that sense of rejuvenation and rest. Decreasing rheumatoid arthritis, which was fascinating. Decreasing blood pressure and reversing insulin resistance. Is that a good list?
Sure. It's obviously
Not
not
exhaustive.
but it's some of the things that we found that maybe benefited from this fasting state.
And you said, you know, you practice at the Lifestyle Center of America in southern Oklahoma, and there your real bread and butter, so to speak, or what you're known for, you treat all different types of things, but I think when people think about diabetes and they think about where to get treated from a lifestyle perspective, many times Lifestyle Center of America is number one on that.
We would like them to think that. That's
right. And so you use, actually, you said a 2 or 3 day fast. And you watched the sugars come down, and then you also said that the insulin resistance gets better. What does that mean, insulin resistance, and what do you mean by improving it?
Insulin has the job of going to the cells and saying, open up and let the energy in. When the cells are insulin resistant, they're saying, when the insulin comes, no thank you, or even absolutely not. I don't want any of that stuff. Now, if you've got some muscles, for example, the thigh muscles, that are used to working and they've been sitting around doing nothing for a long time, they've got this insulin resistance. All the food's coming in, they don't need it, so they're saying no thank you. If you take the food away and then have them moving around, the muscle has work to do, it gets hungry. And that turns that insulin resistance around, generally in a relatively short period of time. That helps to decrease the need for medications, for example.
Fascinating. So your Uncle Al was onto something with that old book. Hey, let's look then. We've looked at the benefits, but are there dangers to fasting? And I think you want to talk with us a little bit about that.
Yes. We're afraid of having people go a long time fasting. We really start, and this is the major problem, with time when you're not taking food in. We alluded to it earlier. Your body starts to eat up muscle. And it will actually eat up not just skeletal muscle, but your heart muscle if you're in the fasting state.
So a little bit's good, a lot can be bad.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the greatest amount of muscle loss is often early in the fast, and like on the second or third day. The first day is not such a problem. And then your body goes into kind of this safety mode where it's trying to protect, and you don't tend to lose as much muscle after those second and third day. But those first 2 days can really be a dilemma.
So you have some listed here, some, what would you call them, minerals that you lose when you go on a fast?
As in, don't try this at home,
okay.
sort of thing. Because when you're fasting, not only do you have the possibility of losing muscle, but you're also likely to be low in things like magnesium or potassium. And if people are drinking a lot of water when they're fasting, they may actually dilute down the sodium. These are the 3 minerals that I generally find problems with in the people that I'm trying to help through this therapeutic fast that we offer to people who come to Lifestyle.
So what's the big
Center
deal
America.
with magnesium levels going low?
Well, magnesium is generally low in people anyhow in America because there's not enough of it in our diets as a general rule. Magnesium in our diets, most of it should come from plants, and people are not eating enough plant, so they tend not to have enough magnesium. Some interesting work done by a fellow by the name of Larry Resnick using magnetic resonance imaging to look inside the cells of the body,
Wow.
not just the blood test. The blood test, it doesn't correlate. What we're talking about is inside the cells of the body. It demonstrates that people with diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, obesity, pretty much across the board have low intracellular magnesium. And the pills that people take, the water pills, for example, tend to suck magnesium out of the body.
So it's already low because of all those
So
reasons.
it tends to be low. You drop it lower and you have trouble with muscle cramps and fatigue, and people just don't feel very good.
And you can give actually a magnesium shot for it, can't you?
Oh, why do that? The supplement by mouth works fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I like giving shots.
You
That's
like
why.
shots?
Okay.
Okay, as a
All right.
nurse, I guess I expect that.
Potassium.
Potassium is another, it's similar to the magnesium. Remember that many of the water pills that people take for their hypertension or congestive heart failure also suck potassium out of the body. And low potassium can lead to problems with muscles and the heart and all kinds of things. So I don't recommend that people go on long fasts without some medical supervision.
And sodium, when it goes low?
Oh, people tend to get really weak and sour. I mean, not happy.
All right. And that, I guess, you know, whenever I've talked to someone that had low sodium, they just kind of start to act kind of loopy.
Yes, I think that's probably a good word for it.
So the dangers then, just to summarize them, I think we have a graphic to summarize them. We have the dangers that you've mentioned is low magnesium, low potassium, low sodium, and loss of muscle, which you said happens the first 3 days.
Well, the second and third day the most, much less on the first day, but the second and third day for sure, that is correct.
So how do you do fasting at the Lifestyle Center of America?
Well, we don't offer it to everybody. I don't recommend that people do it, for example, to lose weight. The reason I think it's okay for people with type 2 diabetes to do is because their insulin levels are high. Insulin tends to hold the muscles in, and I think it's much safer.
So you don't do it for losing weight?
No, I don't think it's appropriate. Well, that may not be quite true, Don. Often, as I'm talking to our guests about this, someone will say, how often should we fast? Okay? Because it sounds so good. There's so many benefits. They're ready to embrace this. Well, why don't we fast? Can I do it once a week? Could I fast 2 days a week?
I think the Bible talks about that, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
All right. So they have a
Several
Bible
of them.
reason.
Yes, they do. We did. We had a fellow who decided he was going to fast for 40 days. And that's another story.
Is he still with us?
No.
Okay.
He went home, and I don't know what happened to him. But my answer to them is, I think it would be a good idea if we fasted every day. And you've brought up several times already that concept of break fast.
Yeah, right.
That first meal of the day. It makes a lot of sense physiologically for us to reach the fasting state on a daily basis. If we eat a small meal or no meal at all in the evening, then during the night, our body changes over to the fasting state. It runs out of the energy in the intestines. It starts using energy from storage. In the first 24 hours, it's not so much muscle, it's much more from the fat compartment.
Okay.
Isn't this an interesting concept?
It
It
is.
almost gets exciting when you start thinking about losing weight while you're sleeping.
Yeah, so it's painless.
It's painless.
Unless you wake up.
Not that bad.
All right. So fasting is good every day, but through maybe just cutting out that evening meal. So if someone's overweight that's watching, that's a good way to go about it, cut out the evening meal.
We have had people tell us that was the one thing they learned from our program. I had a fella call here a couple months ago who said, you know, that's the only thing I've done. I've lost 60 pounds.
So how does someone stop fasting? Let's say they went on that extended fast. How do you stop people from fasting?
That was something that I told you we want to talk about. People who fast for a long time run a danger. Their body gets used to having no food, and if you put in too much all at once, it can be pretty dangerous. The food can actually plug up the blood vessels and can make people very sick. For example, prisoners of war who were allowed, after starving, to eat lots of food are actually made very sick. So what we recommend is that people move to just steamed vegetables. They're easy to digest, easy to handle, and do a couple meals of just plain steamed vegetables.
And you transition
and
them
then
back.
transition back to regular food.
Well, you're a Christian clinician. You know, I know you're a believer. You're a man of faith. You've dedicated your life to service, sacrificial service. Are there any spiritual concepts you like to bring out when you're talking about fasting?
You're getting back to the beginning, where people think that fasting is a spiritual thing. Yes, we can do that. In many ways, diabetes is a disease of gluttony. I use that word carefully, but we're eating more than we need. The disease is actually caused by eating more than we need and not exercising enough. We could take that for a model to sin, for example. Sin is selfishness. It's taking for yourself, not to give. You're taking more spiritual calories in than you're putting out, and you develop spiritual diabetes. It might make sense to stop now, to treat your spiritual diabetes, to stop going to church just to feed yourself entertainment, and begin to do some service. Cut back on those calories, fast, and start serving, and watch the whole process reverse itself and selfishness leave.
Thank you, Dr. Guthrie, for being with us today. Thank you for what you do at Lifestyle Center of America. And thank you also for watching us here today on 3ABN. And we hope that today's program on fasting can be of benefit to you, some other people in your family, and that as a result you'll have health that lasts not for just now, but for a lifetime.